Hello and welcome to this electrical principles training video. In this video we're going to continue considering our SI units, so if you haven't already done so then please click the link in the description below to download the worksheet that goes alongside this series of videos. In this video we're going to be discussing the subject of temperature. So why should we be bothered about temperature as electricians? Well, if you open up your regs book, whether that's in the UK or if you're watching this from some other country, you'll find in there lots and lots of references to temperature. And the reason for that is that when electricity runs through a conductor, the conductor gets hot. A big part of our job as electricians is to make sure that the temperature of that cable doesn't start a fire, which could lead to damage to properties or even fatalities. So temperature is really, really important to electricians. So what do we measure it in? Well, when I ask this question of my learners, someone will normally say Fahrenheit. Well, that's not what we measure temperature in according to the SI unit. So some clever learner will say Celsius. That's not it either, which comes as a bit of a surprise to many. So someone really clever in the group will then perhaps suggest centigrade. Really clever suggestion, but also not the SI unit for temperature. Then some other clever learner will often come up with the right answer. But what is that? Well, before we answer that question, we'll just have a quick history of the measurement of temperature. So it all started with Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit back in 1724. Now, he was the gentleman who came up with the Fahrenheit scale. Now, he decided to set the bottom end of his scale, 0 degrees Fahrenheit, to be the freezing point of a mixture of water, ice and ammonium chloride. And then he decided that he would set the top end of his scale to the temperature of the average human body. So as has been said before, the bottom end of his scale was set to the freezing point of a random mixture and the top end was set to a variable. So perhaps not the best scale in the world for accurate scientific measurements, however still a very useful scale for measuring body temperature because a small change in body temperature results as a large change on the degrees Fahrenheit scale. So it does have its uses and its purposes. However, for a real scientific inquiry, a different scale was come up with. Now it's interesting because many people think that the Celsius scale is a bit of a kind of a cheeky upstart of a scale that's only very recently been invented in order to overthrow the old imperial measurements. But interestingly, Anders Celsius, the gentleman who came up with this scale, he came up with his scale in 1742, so just about 18 years later than Mr. Fahrenheit. So it's certainly got a venerable nature to it. Now, what's quite interesting about the scale that Mr. Celsius came up with was that he kind of set it upside down to the way that we view it now. So he set the boiling point of water to be 0 degrees and he set the freezing point of water to be 100 degrees. So he kind of got his scale upside down to the way we now know it. Not long after, it was put the other way round, and we now know that 0 degrees C is the freezing point of water. I'm sure that someone will comment below at this point and tell me that that's actually the triple point of water, but let's bear in mind the level that we're working at here. And then the top end of the scale, the 100 degrees, is the boiling point of water. And then the kind of distance between those in terms of the temperature change required to achieve freezing to boiling is chopped up into 100 parts, which gives us, each one of those is 1 degree on the Celsius scale. Now, interestingly, Mr. Celsius, he seems to have been quite a modest man because he called it the centigrade scale. He didn't name it after himself. That was done much later in the 1940s, I think, if memory serves. So it's interesting to note that the Celsius scale is very, very old. It's been around for almost as long as the Fahrenheit scale. And it makes a little bit more kind of logical sense the way that it was constructed and defined. So if the Celsius scale is kind of the logical scale, why don't we use that as our SI unit? Well, to answer that, we need to kind of delve a little bit deeper into what temperature actually is. Temperature is kind of, you can think about it as how much the molecules and atoms inside an object are moving around and boshing into each other. So obviously, the more they move around, the higher the temperature. But as the temperature gets colder and colder, those atoms and molecules start to move around less and less and less. And there must come a point where they're not moving at all. And at that point, we have what we refer to as absolute zero. Now on the Celsius scale, that point is at minus 273.15 degrees C, which is very, very cold, as I'm sure you'll agree. So if we're measuring a quality that has a point where you cannot get any lower than it, it makes sense for that to be 0 on that scale, doesn't it? And on the Kelvin scale, which is what we actually use to measure temperature according to the SI system, 0 Kelvin is absolute zero. Nothing can be colder than 0 Kelvin. It doesn't matter what it's made of, what material it is. The absolute coldest it can ever be is 0 Kelvin. And the good thing about the Kelvin scale is actually one kind of degree of change on the Celsius scale is the same as 1 degree of change on the Kelvin scale. So if you increase the temperature of an object by 10 degrees Celsius, you actually change its temperature by 10 Kelvin also. And so they kind of have a bit of compatibility about them, but the Kelvin scale starts at a different point. So absolute 0 on the Kelvin scale is 0. You cannot get any colder than that. Which leads us to an interesting situation where the coldest place in the universe that we know of is in a laboratory in Finland, to the best of my knowledge, where a piece of rhodium was cooled down to just a few billionths of a degree above 0 Kelvin, which is, yeah, that's pretty cool actually, pardon the pun. So if you ever get the chance to head over to Finland and visit that laboratory, I would suggest that you don't put your tongue on it to see how cold it is, because I don't think you'll be getting off that again. So let's move to our worksheet now, and we'll have a look at filling that in. So you can see that the mathematical symbol for the temperature is going to be a capital T. So that's a capital T as the mathematical symbol. And the unit that we measure it in is indeed the Kelvin, named for Lord Kelvin. We've also got there the unit symbol, which is a capital K. Now you'll notice I've been very careful at no point, or I've tried at no point to say degrees Kelvin. You'll notice there's no degree in front of that. There's no little degree symbol up in the superscript before the K there. We just measure temperature in kelvins, not degrees Kelvin. So this kind of leads us to a natural question. If we measure temperature in Kelvin according to the SI unit, then why is it that in our regs books and when we look at weather forecasts, it's always in either degrees Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit? Well, the answer is simply it's what we've got used to. And actually, most human experience kind of takes place between 0 degrees C and 100 degrees C. We know that something at the top end of that scale, 100 degrees C, is going to get very, very warm, and that's probably going to burn us if we touch it. Obviously, we know that the temperature scale goes way above that. It just keeps on going. I'm not aware of any upper limit to the Celsius scale. And at the bottom end of the scale, at 0 degrees C, we know that that's very, very cold. And so we generally know if it's going to be 20 degrees C out tomorrow, we know whether to wear a jacket or crack out the suntan lotion. So just one final kind of interesting point. What's the difference between temperature and heat? Well, this is an interesting one. Technically, the definition for temperature is the average kinetic energy in a material, and the definition of heat is the transfer of thermal energy between objects. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't really clarify the issue for me. So let's think about it as an illustration. Let's say you've got a thimble full of boiling hot water. So you've got a thimble full of water that is 100 degrees C. And then you've got a bathtub that is filled with water at 100 degrees C. Which one would you rather get poured over you? Obviously, if you get the thimbleful poured over you, that's going to cause a small local burn, which will be very unpleasant, but will probably quickly heal. If you get that bathtub of boiling hot water poured over you, that's going to cause some serious damage. And that really is the difference between temperature and heat. The thimble and the bath were both filled with water at the same temperature. However, clearly one of them contained more heat than the other. So that's just a kind of an illustration to help you understand the difference between heat and temperature in a fairly simple way. And then finally, let's consider some of those typical exam questions that you may get in your multiple choice exam relating to this subject. You may get asked, obviously, what is the SI unit for temperature? And you know that those tricky examinators, they're going to be putting inside their answers of the multiple choice, they're going to be putting in Fahrenheit, Celsius, centigrade and Kelvin. Be sure to choose the Kelvin because that is the SI unit. But they may also ask you a question in the regs, what is used as the typical measurement of temperature? And then you'd obviously have to be thinking about the Celsius scale. Another typical question that I've seen is, what is the freezing point of water? And then you're given lots of options on the Kelvin scale. So try and remember, it would be about 273 Kelvin. So there we go. Hopefully we've got a worksheet filled in. We're one step closer to knowing all of the SI units that we'll need to pass our exams, but also to work successfully in the electrical industry also. And we've seen some of those typical exam questions that you may get. So all that remains in this video is to say thank you very much for watching.